Okay, so today I got in a brand new from musician's friend Tama Speed Cobra 910 hi-hat stand. Replaced my Iron Cobra Lever Glide 900 series hi-hat stand I've had for about 20 years. I think I got it in 2005 or 6. And Paco was here for the arrival of this. Anyway, I have a first gen double pedal with a lot of patina on it that I just got in. And this has been a major issue because of the bushing inside of the ferrule that goes in here, which I've posted possibly another video or two about already. So I've had to try to reverse engineer this to fit bearings, actual bearings, and that led me to wonder, what is an Oiley's bearing hinge? Because I see the blatantly obvious gold, which I hate that color, but hinge guard block. Dang near want to chip all the paint out of the Tama and the Speed Cobra and make them look like this with no paint fill, or put black or red or anything other than gold. But anyway, I wanted to know, is it any different than what this is? Because this is the ferrule, and a little copper bushing, if I take this out, goes inside of that hole, and the O-ring fits down in this chamber, sits in that lip that you can see at the bottom of the spindle bolt, and that's where the O-ring goes into. There's a noticeable bottleneck of this. This is 11 millimeter diameter on the outside and 5 millimeter diameter on the inside. And I was playing with actual bearings, little ABEC 5 10 millimeter bearings that actually perfectly fit over that stud. Set them side by side just so you can see, because I don't want it to fall in there at the moment. Use my fake dental tool to get it out. Anyway, it fits perfectly over the spindle. It is 1 millimeter too small for this clamp, even maximum clamped pinched, to bite, and I need the pedal to bite so that it freely flows around the bearing. Seems like a really simple solution, right? And in fact, even without this ferrule in there, you can stack two of these 4 millimeter wide bearings side by side in this channel. They rest on that lip more or less, and another one will sit on top of it, and you still have room for the nut to go on the threads, and it fits. But I had to know, is this Oiley's bearing hinge any different, since it's this registration, trademark, whatever? Is it any different in 2025, being that this is likely a 2024 release? And it turns out it's not. I'm borderline appalled to say that the only change in the design is that this is 1 millimeter wider. That is literally the only thing difference. The inner diameter is about 1 millimeter wider, and the exterior diameter is 12 millimeters. This is the copper bushing. I'm carefully pulling it out because it's quite fragile. I'm quite certain it's copper because I've seen it in pieces pulled out of my Speed Cobra, and it's just a split in half bushing. It is a bushing, it is not a bearing. Forgive me if I said bearing. And it just squeezes in there, and this is what they're lying to customers and calling a bearing set. If this is a bearing, it isn't a ball bearing, and bearings are widely accepted to be balls. You can have needle bearings if you want to ride that type of system, but this would be a case in point bushing. This is exactly what this is. If you go to the hardware store and you look for this, you find these cylinders, they will call them bushings all day. This design is extremely outdated. It is not a bearing, so in my opinion, they're lying to everybody by calling it that. And when this pretty little copper half a millimeter thick piece of copper, if you just, the little, few human hairs in width, when that fades out, which can happen, especially with just rougher play or gigging or whatever. I mean, I had an Iron Cobra for 25 years and it didn't fade out, but it didn't look as good as it could. There were little pieces missing on the rim in particular. This thing then is free floating and doesn't want to fit right. So what it does is it slides over there and then goes into that same bottleneck type O-ring fitting, which obviously with the heel block removed is very loose. And then you pinch that on, and there could be bearings here, or one good sized bearing, could be two side by side to change the pressure. I don't know. It is just appalling to me that this is not a better system than it is, when it should be no different than the little bearing that just vanished on me. But here it is. This is what should be found inside. By the way, just a real quick, these are Fushi bearings. They are ABEC 5, little 10 millimeters. They are kind of adorable. They make them much smaller, believe it or not, and it's the wrong size by 1 millimeter. If they were 11, they would perfectly slide right in here because it'd be the same diameter as this ferrule. But nonetheless, and I did find 11 millimeters. I've already bought them. I expect them to arrive tomorrow, and create my at least ultimate solution for this, and a possible solution for this in case I ever want to ditch this whole system. But you probably need them to be 12 millimeters to fit that cavity. Anyway, I just found it, try not to be infuriated, for the simple sense that this is such a well-engineered product from just kind of ground up. Even the clutch has changed, but not a lot has changed in 20 years. Quite frankly, 20 years from the lever glide, this is exactly the same more or less as it was on Iron Cobra ones that I've been using in that 2 decades of time. This, if anything, got worse. I don't really care for the lack of adjustment on that foot. This used to be able to slide in and out, and I'm not really sure why they removed that option. But yeah, there's a few other minor changes, very, very minor, just in terms of the way like this pinches. This is a nicer clamp system for this portion, but you're looking at a well-engineered product. No need to reinvent the wheel, right? In terms of just the general physics of how this thing functions, and yet you're telling me you can't just put an actual bearing in here, but you're going to lie to everybody and say that it is. I just find it ridiculous that they can engineer this better in the course of at least 25 years, possibly 30, dating back to the original Iron Cobras, which I believe were mid-90s. Mine was from 2000, my double pedal. It's just insane to me. I don't know how this is worth the value that it is, and you couldn't put in skate wheel bearings, not saying skate wheel size, but cassette type cup and race bearings like are found inside of each of these stanchions, and there's 2 of them in this one. I just replaced all 4, and the 2 on the slave pedal, the auxiliary pedal, and yeah, those are all brand new bearings. They're nice and free flowing, and you should be able to do the same thing with the heel hinge, which is vitally important to the way this functions. When this is loose, look at what it does to this. I mean, it's horrible. The amount of play this thing has when this is loose, even if it's a little bit loose, is kind of unbearable. Really, you feel it. Trust me. If that nut falls off, or this floats around something that isn't pinched tight to it and still has a flowing, swiveling around the spindle itself, this feels like crap when you're playing. So make it make sense, I guess, is my bottom line. I'm really shocked that nobody brings up this contact point. It's a vital contact point to the integrity of the pedal. And by the way, I already had to replace this one with a nylon bushing. Behind there is a nylon bushing. I've removed the copper one, and that black you see right there is a nylon bushing that has been replaced, and it happened to be just the right size to perfectly fit around it. And as you can see, it flows very nicely. But again, it's not a bearing, it's a bushing, and I just wish I could understand why they haven't gotten away from this system in, I guess, about 3 decades. That's my rant.